think I myself are really looking forward to it. Well, it's my pleasure to announce tonight our speaker, introduce him. Oh, there you are. No, just kidding. Steve has got a really long record in paleontology, and he's like a lot of people. He started when he's really young. He started when he was 16 years old, and he was working at that time with...
Oh, so it's funny you should mention the talk coming up. I worked with Lisa Bohatch for several months. Craig Scott was actually my TA for mammals back in 2008 when I was doing undergrad. Yeah, no, I've got I know a lot of people in paleo. I've been around, but I haven't spoken since 2012. Kind of, I don't know, never
busy.
Yeah, well, so we're going to talk about what I've been up to since about 2015. This really important area, actually, that a lot of people don't know about, thankfully.
Yeah, and this is his major, I would say it's his passion in his life right now.
No, actually, we've got several other things coming up. This is almost done, except for, yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll get into that, but there's a little backdrop there, but he's the founder of the Irvine Regional Paleontology Survey. Yeah,
which is no longer appropriate because we're not really going back there unless the Canadian Museum goes back there, which is in the works.
I think one of the reasons his talk is going to be really relevant for us tonight is that he's sort of dealing with microfossil sites a lot down there.
A lot, yes. That's one way of putting it.
Almost extensively.
Yes.
And those are what we're dealing with in our microfossil sorting sessions, which was just talked about earlier. That we're sorting through.
So I'm
not used to standing in front of this. Sorry, doing the swift current stuff out of Saskatchewan, which is a little bit different in age, you've seen, but I think the two tied together, so you'll get a good idea of what microfossil sites are all about.
Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with that, we'll turn you loose.
Cool, all right, so yeah, my name is Steve Kary, only a BSc, don't get too excited about the academic stuff. I did do an undergraduate thesis on snake vertebrae and the evolution of limb reduction under Michael Caldwell. So this is Irvine. On this photo actually is Paul Johnston and Paul McNeil, also Wendy Unfried. So those people are names you may be familiar with. Paul McNeil is a big league consultant. Paul Johnston, of course, is the clam god. He works here at Mount Royal. He actually taught me back in 2005 or whatever, and we've been friends ever since. And Wendy Unfried, of course, is the head of archaeology for all of southern Alberta for the survey there. So we kind of had a really cool visit that day and kind of looked at all the resources. And my cousin Dave was there as well, that he took this photo actually. At the bottom, he kind of got lucky on that and had a bunch of people. Okay, what button do I press to cycle it over?
So we can do this like this one.
This one here?
No, that's not working.
Oh my God. You're telling me that people in paleontology don't know how to use technology?
Well, no, I'm not in paleo. I'm an engineer.
Oh, you're an engineer? Oh
so no, here it is.
This one here. Okay, perfect. Okay. So this was also taken by Dave Nisbet, Gus the dog there. Here's a disclaimer: do not go there. There are several reasons for that. Firstly, probably most relevant to you, extremely sensitive sites. Two of which may be excavated as early as next summer. We don't know yet. But another reason is because there are definite threats of gun violence. They will prosecute you for going on their land. I am not kidding. I know the landowners. You do not want to go down there. They will not, on this particular ranch, they've cut off all, nobody's allowed ever again, basically. So who am I? How did this start? Well, BSc in 2008 from University of Alberta, double major. Former consultant. I also worked with Paul McNeil and did one job with Sam Wilson way back in the day. And so this all started in, should be 2015 there, oops. 2015 in a smart car. Heather McNair and I drove down to Redland, Alberta, which you're probably familiar with, just to do some fossil collecting. We found nothing. So I was like, well, we drove all this way. I called up Derek Larson, who was then at the Grand Prairie Museum. He was a classmate of mine. Fortunately, he said, why don't you try Irvine? So we drive down there and we kind of see these foreboding signs: do not enter, trespassers will be shot, blah, 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 blah. We decide in the heart of big truck country to drive up this driveway in a smart car. So Heather says, I'm not getting out of the car. You're going to see a shotgun before you see any of his land. I knock on the door. There's some feral children too, literally mosquito covered in their underwear, basically. They got kicked out of the house for being bad. But it didn't look great. And so this guy actually said, yeah, go take a look. Just show me what you find. I said, away we go. So off we went. And this here is actually a site where we found plesiosaur vertebrae right at the base of the Bear Paw Formation. Funny, I actually chucked my bag on them and Heather said, Steve, you're an idiot. Yeah. There are 2 vertebrae there. Those were actually donated here to Mount Royal. Okay, so our methods, a little bit unique. No permit, surface collection only. Prospecting mostly and some surveying there. We did some really bizarre stuff. For example, this is Dr. Haley Street on the far left here in the water. And Abigail Stosky and Stephanie Elderfield in the little buoy. In 1884, a fellow named Panton said at Cabin Lake he found dinosaur bone. So we decided to check it out. This particular thing didn't go so well. They were actually being pushed away from the island by the wind. They didn't have a rudder. It was an absolute disaster. They got to the island. This much of bird poop. We're talking like a foot of bird poop. Dead birds, smelled awful. Abigail had a breakdown, so we decided there were no dinosaur bones on that island. Weird, right? Another one, this was, the one in the middle is Laura, who's actually in the audience. Carrying her dog out on a day where the prairie level was about 40 degrees. That's when I discovered the site we've called Matriarch. I measured it at 64 degrees Celsius. Her dog's little foot pads actually were like getting burned, so she carried the dog out. And here we are getting to know the locals. We drove onto this land, and this landowner's dad owns it. He was cool with driving. The son who tends it was not. So of course Laura finds the one badger hole that would capture her car. And we have to call this man, who is a former amateur boxer, furious at me to get us out. Yeah, so we're still allowed on the land, weirdly enough. It turns out really, really nice family. You never would have guessed. So some quick stuff. Where is Irvine? Because a lot of people don't know. There's some Americans out there that do not know. Basically, I'll use the little cursor here. So here's Calgary. This is where we are now. You drive down here, and right around this turn in Bassano here, it gets really bad. Just a boring drive, and I don't like that drive down in through here. But anyway, Medicine Hat, and then there's Irvine right here, this little red dot, and there's the Saskatchewan border. So it's about 3.5 hours from where we're standing right now. And this is an old-timey sort of look. This is actually what the main strip of Irvine still looks like, but with less people, believe it or not. It's not in as good of shape as it once was. Okay, so there's a long history that we got to go over because this is really cool. So J. Hoyce Canton, not the greatest writer, wrote a paper about like fossil leaves and his adventure about going to Calgary, coming back. It was not a very academic paper, but he reported on reptilian finds by a Mr. Lawson, who was out there looking for coal. The coal out there is about 1 meter or 2 thick. So yeah, good place to look for coal. Mounted Police also reported the presence of a large reptilian skeleton. And cool enough, this really blew me away, the First Nations actually referred to it as the Great Lizard. Now, if you're talking comparative anatomy, we don't really have anything to compare, say, a mosasaur. That's what they were probably talking about, a big mosasaur. They didn't have anything like an alligator or a large lizard to really get into the ability to, so they were using like tiny little snake vertebrae to determine that this is actually a lizard, which impresses the hell out of me. So I tried to dig up a picture of the last encampment, which was actually where we were working. Another reason not to go there, huge archaeological stuff down there that they will get very upset if you touch it. After that, T.C. Weston, fish teeth, scales, champsosaur, crocodile, and dinosaur bones. If you've done any kind of paleontology in Alberta in this particular age, which is 75 million, you've probably run into our friend champsosaur. And if you haven't, you will. I assure you, they're everywhere. Then Luke Lindo in 1948, his son, I believe, Al Lindo, was the preparator for U of A when I was going there. There's some debate. The locals say it was someone else that actually found the skeleton. I didn't get into a slap fight about that, so we kind of went with this. So they found the Chasmosaurus irvinensis, or Vegaceratops, if you will, skeleton. Kind of a big deal. There's only 2 known. There's a partial skull, I believe, from south of Irvine, and this one. That's it. Then Dr. Langston, of course, came in, excavated, and he left something out of his description, which has kind of plagued Jordan Mallon a little bit, and a few other researchers. He didn't tell us specifically where in the stratigraphy it was. Big problem, because we want to know how old it is. He said a nice clean sandstone. Well, as we'll get into, there's some nice big channel sands. Part of the valley is all just clean channel sands. Walk it for 10 kilometers, find nothing. Oops, there's a skeleton sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting story that James Campbell actually did the research on this and helped me out a great deal. He's a pretty cool guy, just graduated out of U of C. We're getting through the history. Okay, Dr. Fox and Paul Johnston actually came down in the 60s and 70s and found a lot of holotypes. Holotype means this is the specimen, the first of its kind, the one that we use to measure all other specimens against. So it's kind of an important thing. Yeah, 3 mammals, 6 lizards, 2 frogs, a siren, and a gar. All in one go, all in one site. Pretty cool. Tribal Museum came back in 1995. Don Brinkman informed me that they collected 250 kilograms of matrix, which, wow. Then they were back in 2008 to get the mammal job. We tried to relocate where Don Brinkman and Hope Johnson visited. We think we found it, but we're not sure. So a total of 13 holotypes, including the one unpublished one, which is actually huge. So we're getting into the geology now, so you guys all know what's going on. A lot of people in paleontology really overlook the Saskatchewan sands and gravels. Lisa Bohatch taught me that these can actually be really awesome. I'll tell you for a fact, out near Empress, we found tons and tons of bones. And the way that you can distinguish them from modern, because they can be bison, they can be camel, there's a report of a rhino I couldn't substantiate. You tap them together and they sound like glass. This is because this is a very silica-rich, quartz cobble-dominated, tertiary or neogene, so just before the glaciers, gravel. They can be barren. They can have rip-ups from the bear paw, so really cool stuff. Really good place to find baculites, fragments, shark teeth, stuff like that. We didn't have that much luck, despite Stephanie Elderfield scouring it for us. But yeah, if you see it, it's always just worth a peek. Sometimes you find some really cool stuff in there. It doesn't have to be the main focus of when you're out there, but do take a look. So now we're on to the Bear Paw Formation. We're all probably familiar with this, cruel mistress as I call it, because you can walk it for like 20 kilometers. And I remember one time I was with Lisa Bohatch, walking, finding nothing, nothing, nothing. Oops, 5 stacked Placenticerus ammonites the size of my torso. Just stacked 5 of them. Okay, cool. So you gotta actually walk this stuff. It's great bentonite rich muds, Campanian age, which is 75 million. Uppermost coal is actually, so in the Lethbridge coal zone, which we're going to talk about, is actually located in the Bear Paw, in these marine shales. This terrestrial swampy coal actually comes out of nowhere. And it's just kind of sitting there alone. It's really quite interesting. There's also these large sandstone concretions with Cruziana trace fossils on them. If anyone has any idea what the hell these are, I would love to know, because they kind of appear. We saw one in the one coulee, and we're like, oh, this is really unique, cool, you know. And then there was like 1,000 further down coulee, just everywhere. And so I don't know what's going on with them. I'm not specifically strong on my geology necessarily, but yeah, they're really cool. So this is kind of showing this chart here where we are, using the snake hook as a pointer that I stole from my girlfriend's snake cane. So we've got the top of the Bear Paw, and then, or sorry, the top of the Dinosaur Park, and the bottom of the Bear Paw, straddling at 76.2 million years. And on the far side here, we actually have, going up from the bottom, you have mudstone, and then bentonite-rich mudstone, and then mudstone, and then kind of just above that third terrace, meter thick of this Lethbridge coal, and then more mudstone, topped by this gravel. So that actually, the last trip we were there, we actually determined that is continuous throughout the region, which was actually pretty important because I thought it was lenticular. And we'll get into that in just a sec. So we've got the fauna here. Well, I know this is boring for some of you guys who've been around. But clams, oysters, ammonites, trace fossils, corals. We found some neat stuff. Plesiosaurs, we did find that one. We did not find these concretions that contain these little lobsters called Hoploperia. That's significant to another project that I'm doing, and just something interesting that they appear some places, they don't appear others, and I'm not sure why. I don't think it's relevant to how close to shore they are. So yeah, some of our finds, this is a really big burrow, the one on the top here with the green background. And some clams that Paul Johnson got excited about. And this is the really warped and terrible elasmosaur vertebrae. Well, 1 1/4 of one anyway. So not really anything identifiable as far as the elasmosaur, but that was actually interesting because we found it with a bunch of oysters, indicating it was closer to shore. A little bit of brackish influence. So now we're on to the good stuff. Dinosaur Park Formation. Coastal monsoonal near zero paleo gradient, which means that the water is going slow. Hence the coals, hence the muddy lag deposits, lenticular bedding, really cool stuff. I mean, we actually pulled over and stopped, and Paul Johnson was like, oh my God, that's the greatest lenticular surface I've ever seen. Big white channel sands and mudstones. This is Dave Nisbet, and I believe that's Gus the dog. Just incredible. You got this. So, and the coal is even inconsistent. As inconsistent as this stratigraphy is, the coal can be inconsistent in that this is only a muddy kind of organic shale on top. It's not like a true kind of coal that you think of when you talk about coal. So it really changes back and forth, but there are some consistencies in that it's always present, but it's not always great. Okay, so the Lethbridge coal zone, this is something that a few researchers, including Jenny Scott of Mount Royal, are currently looking at. Like Edward Van Der East as well. Basically, this is, well, we'll go through the list, I guess. 1 to 2 meter thick coals, one in each formation in Irvine. So you got one in the Bear Paw, one in the Dinosaur Park Formation. That kind of is our little bracket there, right? They're about, well, it's hard to say, they're never really together on the same thing, but say 20, 30 meters, something like that, depending on where the Bear Paw scour actually comes in. So this is the final zone in the Dinosaur Park and Old Man Formation fauna. So you actually see, this is sort of an example. There's only one Centrosaurus bed in the Upper Dinosaur Park Formation as of 2005 when Brian Evans talked about it in that fantastic Dinosaur Park book. It's now in print. May have been supplanted by Styracosaurus, which is another Centrosaurian. This is actually stratigraphically close to Steveville, which is a fantastic microvertebrate place. If you can find these, definitely check them out. They're just north of Dinosaur Provincial Park. They're just a touch under where our sites are stratigraphically. You'll find all the same stuff, basically, hopefully. And these are just examples, these pictures of sort of these windy, really slow, moving, swampy, kind of meandering little marshy mud pits that represent Irvine, at least the geology. Keep hitting my. Okay, I'll try to not hit that with my chin. Okay, so the final overview. To nobody's surprise, in this regards in Mylodapus, which is a ray, a type of ray, their teeth are everywhere. I'm sure everybody here who's been out to the park or whatever has seen them. We did find only a single hypodonted shark, which just came out of Bear Paw somewhere. Interestingly enough, this is just a small sampling of fish armor on the left here for people watching at home. 5 different variants, right on top there. And then below, we actually have, these are all, these far ones are all basically sturgeon or something like that. This big one with the bumps on it could be the end part of a ray tooth plate, but it's probably sturgeon. And then a nice Bellastonus spine as well. So the fish are really, really diverse. And somebody really should do some sampling. I'm not sure how they would go about assigning the armor to fish type other than like Letta, Isosteus, scar form kind of thing. It's kind of, I don't know enough about it, honestly. But then, yes, the SDZ Sox Foxi, which is a pike, holotype, came from that fantastic site with the 13 or 12 we count 13 because of Megaceratops, so the 12 holotypes come from that one particular spot, which we did get to see. I didn't do a lot of photography of it. The family was a little bit combative about their privacy. So now we're into the amphibians. Don Brinkman described Hensipitrachus kermiti, literally Jim Henson's frog Kermit. Really, really cool. It's a toothed frog. There's one more unnamed frog apparently from there. And then Hadrosaurus, which is a siren, which if you're not familiar with them, Mel Smith, who's a goldsmith here in town, has got sirens. And so she sent us some pictures of them. They're the sort of long, two front limbs sometimes, two little Weasley back limbs, relatives of salamanders from Florida and places like that. Scepherpeton, which is like a salamander but isn't a salamander, it's pretty close though. They're present, which is important later because we actually found another one. Okay, lizards and crocodiles. Alberta Champsa, Ladiosuchus, the usual. Those are the alligator and crocodile known from the formation. Armor and keys are common. This is where Richard Fox strikes again. He did a lot of work. 3 Teid holotypes, 1 Chemopsid, 1 Skinkid, 1 Anguid, 1 Heliodromatid, and 1 Varanid. So for those of us who did not take a lot of biology, the Chemopsids are kind of like skinks. Skinks are skinks. Anguids are kind of like if Varanids and skinks kind of had a baby, is a good way, they're kind of in between them. Heliodromatids are the like beaded lizards, which is really cool that they were up in Alberta. And then Varanids are things like monitor lizards and earless monitors and things like that. No Coniophis. So Coniophis is a really neat snake. If you're not familiar with it, it is a pipe snake. There are 4 species, all of which can be prescribed to a different part of the spine. So really there aren't 4 species, they don't change. Interestingly enough, they are in the beds above and below this area. So we know that they're around, but it could be that, and this is just spitballing, that because this is more coastal, these guys aren't present, kind of lends itself to the whole they were terrestrial and not water origin. Just an interesting sort of oddity that nobody's found them there yet, despite all of the material being taken out. For turtles and champsosaurs, we don't know what champsosaur specifically, though we have a pretty good idea it's Teniogenes. Need more of a skull to really identify that. And another thing that is notorious, and you will all know it, Aspidaratoides. Literally everywhere. Like you can't, at some of the sites, if you step, you'll hit like 5 pieces of shell. It's ridiculous. We do have Basilennes, Boremes, and Nophocheles. That's a really cool one. So we actually have a full Boremes skeleton with unguals and other parts coming out. That is potentially being taken out. I don't know when, but when we got there, somebody had actually already been poking away at it, so somebody's been waiting for it to erode out and take them pieces, which doesn't surprise me because people are out there all the time. This is Lophocheles. In the middle here is Lophocheles. So Lophocheles is a marine turtle known from Kansas chalk, which is a strictly marine deposit. This would be potentially, as far as I know, the first terrestrial record of this animal. And Don Brinkman, when I was chatting with him on the phone one day, suggested that maybe the babies take shelter closer to land, or maybe just somehow got there. But this is a very small baby, like it's a little juvenile, you can see. It's just a little tiny guy. And then the champsosaur stuff on the far left there, or I guess if you're looking at the screen, far right. Just a tooth row, I believe that's a coracoid or something. Head of the tibia, head of the femur. Just lots and lots of these guys everywhere. Okay, so ornithischians. Styracosaurus, Chasmosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Procerolophus, Lambeosaurus, those are your hadrosaurs, your duckbills. Euoplocephalus, Edmontonia, those are your nodosaur and your ankylosaur, and Stegosaurus. 2 pachycephalosaur frontal parietal skull domes are from Irvine, which is actually pretty impressive. These guys are rare. When we found this Stegosaurus validum squamosal, complete, juvenile, I emailed the Terrell and their one response was, that belongs in a museum. We have photos of that later. Caleb was quite excited to get that. We have an entire juvenile hadrosaur forelimb coming out. Further behind that is actually what looks to be some large flat bone, could be pelvis, we're not sure. But that has a good shot at being Lambeosaurus. It's right in the sweet spot of rocks, which would be fantastic. Only like several feet of overburden, really close to a road too. There's an unpublished headless hadrosaur skeleton with skin, that will be important later, that is from this area as well. And funny enough, this quarry is where we found the Stegosaurus. And of course, the Chasmosaurus irvinensis skeleton and an unnamed skull boss, which is like the big, if you think of Pachyrhinosaurus, the great big mess of bone where the horn should be. It's either Pachyrhinosaurus or maybe a Shulosaurus. That is, I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. Okay, so Vegaceratops, this guy's been a big deal lately. He's been published back and forth. Is it Chasmosaurus? Is it not Chasmosaurus? James Campbell had a pretty good final word in quotations. So these are perceived now by some as what's called a chronotaxa. So it's a taxon as it moves through time. So you actually have a Chasmosaurus in each segment of the Old Man, Lower Dinosaur Park, and Dinosaur Park going upwards in strata. Belli, Russelli, and Irvinensis. Irvinensis, of course, being the uglier of the three, in my opinion. Although, if you look at the skull here, you look at the very top of the frill, it's got bangs, which I thought was actually pretty unique. I think that's actually the only, no, there's a few others. There's Cosmoceratops and Wendyceratops, which do that as well. And of course, next to it is just a piece of frill that we actually found during our survey, isolated, unfortunately. Really fantastic piece, donated to Mount Laurelwood as well. So yeah, as we were saying, only one skeleton and one partial skull is known. This lady named Pauline, for years, had been pestering the Canadian Museum of Nature because she found some rule that said, if you take something from someone's land, you got to give the cast to the town or something like that. I never read the rule, never heard of it. But because of our survey, and because of us working with that museum, this isn't actually a picture of the skull, same cast. That was actually delivered via the Canadian Museum to the town of Irvine. So they now have one on display, which is really, really cool. I'm really glad that she persisted. Another really important thing, like we talked about, we don't know specifically where it is, and all they want to know is, does it come from above or below the coal? Well, now we know we've got pretty good data that says basically all of your skeletons are coming from above the lower coal, which is in the Dinosaur Park Formation. So we're pretty damn sure. We weren't allowed on this land. In fact, that's one of the more combative landowners, so nobody will see that land for some time. So, sauroskins and pterosaurs. Yes, we do have pterosaur. Nothing to get excited about though. So Sauronophalestes, Stenonychosaurus or Trudon was renamed to Stenonychosaurus by Van der Weest. I suppose there's some debate about it being a tooth taxon or something like that. Daspletosaurus, so Gorgosaurus should be present, but Curry in 2005 did assert that Daspletosaurus is probably more common. So I'm just saying it's Daspletosaurus. These are your Tyrannosaurs, your big guys. Sauronophalestes, of course, is a Trudon or your raptor dudes. And then we have a bird tooth, which is right here. Sorry for the bad photo. Again, I couldn't take it with me, and they said, take your photos, and that's that. So I had a pen. This is a pen cap, or where you write with, right? So that's the size of it. And we can actually see that it has no serrations on the backside, but it does protrude out to make a nice flat surface. Eric Snively actually helped me confirm. I was pretty sure, but he helped me confirm. And then Paul McNeil snagged this nice Trudon phalanx from a site that produces jet black bone. Really, really cool. Probably some manganese or something going on in there. Of course, no sauropods, right? We're in North America, or in Canada. It was like, what, one trackway? That's it. Really, really cool. Francois Terrien was quite excited. Neonate ornithomimids, and I say plural because there was two of them. Only one element each, but these things are small. So we know that they're neonates. He actually checked them for texture. There's a texture that comes with embryonic bone that was absent. At least we were able to assert that these things had hatched, but weren't alive for very long afterwards. So possible pterosaur, there was about 3 or 4 pieces of this really featureless bone, paper thin, like super, super thin, that was interpreted as pterosaur. So we know that what that tells us is we know they were around, or they were coming from downstream or from upstream. Nothing to get too excited about, but there's always the potential for something more. Mammals, this is where we get really excited, especially for mammal folk. So marsupials are the most common according to Sankey. 2 marsupial holotypes are known from Irvine, and 1 placental. So going from left to right, we found this Mesogma molar, which was actually donated and identified by Paul Johnston and donated here for their, they now have a microvertebrate collection here, thanks to Irvine, which is really, really cool. That was found at one of the M sites. So that one was separate, but these 2 were both found at a site called Matriarch, which we're going to become a little bit more familiar with. Matriarch it's an extremely dense bone bed. It's a ceratops, or extremely dense microsite, a ceratopsian bone bed, and we found fossil skin. So we're pretty amped about this. This might be, hopefully, fingers crossed, excavated by someone in the next 3 years. That landowner is super cool. He actually straight up asked me, do you guys want to excavate? And I said, what if I could, my friend? So Eodelphus and just a Stagedontian boulder. It's funny, this picture on the far right here for you guys was actually originally much bigger. I just put down my chisel and snapped a photo to show how many things, there was like 50 things in the shot of just bone. I had it back home, I just said, I'm such an idiot. And there it is, Stagedontian maxilla. I couldn't relocate it, I don't know where it is. But there it is in the photo anyway. Pretty cool that it's just that rich and that diverse that just a random photo would have that. So here's Matriarch. So I'm sorry about this. I'm not showing you larger scale photos of the sites, nor am I giving you any specific idea of where they are, partially for your safety, partially for the safety of the bones. Not that you guys are going to wreck anything, but more traffic means more foot stuff on the outcrop, and that's not good. So you see here on the far right here, a ceratopsian ulna. Of course, you see, like, if you look closely, all these tan-colored things, all of them are bone of some sort. There's some teeth in and around there too. Our friend Aspidaratoides just below the ulna there. Yeah, it was in pretty good shape. It only took 1 season for it to turn just into garbage. But we had centra. So the next 2 photos over on the left are centrums from ceratopsians, parts of the vertebrae. Everywhere, there was like half dozen of them. All right above this full layer. And then, of course, on the other side is a site that's called Immortal. I'll tell you why these are called this, actually, but this is the same site, it's just slumped down in the butte. The reason these are named as such is because I was listening to music by a band called Ancient Archers. Matriarch was playing when I found the site. Pretty simple. Turns out the singer actually donated to our cause, which is really, really cool to have that sort of involvement. Plus, I think Matriarch's a pretty cool name for a site. I don't know. Oh, and up top here, the very top one, that is tooth mark bone from the Tyrannosaurid. You can see there's 2 deep grooves, really deep. Like I've seen some tooth mark bone that's just like a feather duster on it. These are gouges in the bone. These are fantastic. When I saw that from like 10 feet away, I was like, oh my God. So yeah, these are higher than the historical sites, which is important. So these come from above the coal. Those other sites come from 13 meters below the coal. So we're talking about a difference of about 14, maybe 15 meters, depending on measurement. That's a big deal. So these sites were all previously completely unknown, except for maybe Don Brinkman visiting them with hope and couldn't relocate them, I don't know. We had another really cool site, the spine site, named for a spine. Yeah, we had basically an entire midsection of a horned dinosaur, the vertebrae, the centra, just everywhere. And Laura was actually with me on this. She's in the audience there. But also a bone scab just below the spine. We arranged the spine for the landowner just to be like, see, it is a spine. They were collected, they were left for the landowner to enjoy. This was actually at the lowermost bear paw. So we actually had cone and cone, which is a dewatering structure when you have the ocean that kind of goes away, this crystalline sort of stuff in these layers about yay thick in Alberta. They usually indicate some kind of dewatering, at least according to Paul Johnston. There was also ironstone, to no one's surprise, because look at how iron rich these are. Ironstone layer just underneath them. This is actually a good example of, if we look at this far right photo, the bear paw oozes all over everything. It's what's called a deflation zone. It just smears itself all over everything, which makes the actual stratigraphy a little bit difficult when you factor in slumps. So these are the M sites, M1, M2, and M3, all in the same coulee, extremely rich microsites. We don't know exactly where they are stratigraphically. I think that they're coming from below the coal, but above where the historical sites are. So we even have maybe a third zone of fauna, which is pretty cool. I know there's a few people that were interested in this in particular for the Boremes that we showed. These are the, on the far right here, we have an ungule on the bottom, that's the tip of the finger, and a marginal, which is a piece of armor that's not attached to the shell, but is still part of the overall defense of the animal. And again, sorry for the bad photos, these are the run and gun with the landowners, right? So we also found, this is a, what I think is a juvenile horned dinosaur, correct me if I'm wrong, the dentary, something like that. So it's just a little guy, just little guys. And then a phalanx of the horned dinosaur as well, just little teeny tiny guy. That was actually found by a landowner's daughter when she was like 6. That's actually how we got access to the land. She was a big rock hound, and the dad was like, I don't know. Asks his daughter, he's like, okay, we'll get our boots, let's go. Really cool girl. So probably above the coal, maybe, or below the coal, maybe. I'm still trying to figure that out. The coal isn't present in this part of the coulee, except in the bear pond. So kind of useless in figuring out where you are in the dinosaur park because we don't have the coal. And it's so lenticular that things change kind of rapidly and stuff. So some more babies, blah, 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 lots of cool stuff from these 3 sites. So we have a really small microsite on the left here. So that's about the equivalent of the size of my torso. Every single major dinosaur group in Alberta has been found at that site. If we look closely at the rock, you'll see why. Gar scale here, tooth there, scale, tooth, just, they're everywhere. I'll point to them for the people at home. We've got, oops, what have I done? There we go. Scales here, and teeth everywhere. I mean, this was so rich that I thought, well, why don't I just collect the whole damn block? But of course, it was attached to the rest of the block. And you can see the struggle with stratigraphy. I mean, if you look at this other photo, looking up from the red box, you see all these brown streaks throughout. These are all, so this is a big clean channel sand, but with mighty leg overbanks everywhere. So these rivers are not able to make up their mind about where they're going, and that's partly due to the low water volume and the fact that it's monsoonal. So when you have low water volume and then the monsoon comes in, you often will see changes in the river's course and things like that because the river doesn't have a lot of pushback because it's just a little tiny smidge. So that's a really cool site. That will take probably another 50 years to replenish because we cleaned that one out. Here's the neonate ornithomimids. Again, sorry for the bad photos. These were brought immediately to the trail. I believe I was told that I would get photos of these and never did. Unfortunately, they're too busy. It's okay. Yeah, so this was, actually Laura was with me on this one. This is her camera lens cap, so about that big. So this guy here is a couple centimeters. That's an ungule on the left, it's on the left there for the people at home. Funny story about this one, I was there with Laura Suring and Christianette. We were at the table looking at what everyone had found. And I said, who found this? And they're like, I don't know. Well, I just picked up cool rocks. I don't know. Did you find it? I don't know. And so I couldn't track down which of the 2 found it, but we knew where it was from, which was the more important thing. It's funny to me, usually when you find something really cool, you're like, I'm the one who found it. At least I am. So the other one here is just a phalanx. Again, this is a key compared to it, the end of a key. So look at how small these 2 guys are. When I say neonate, these things are tiny, tiny, tiny. Comparable in size to, I don't know if any of you have seen, there's baby hadrosaurs that have been poked at. Yeah, comparable in size to those. Well, yay big. They're really small. By yay big, to people at home, I mean the size of like an orange, like a large navel orange. So here's the skin from Matriarch found by Haley Street. Kudos to her. I was managing several different volunteers with varying amounts, plus 2 children, landowner children, they're hard to manage. And so giving support where needed. And she comes up to me and says, what does it mean when there's a weird texture on the ironstone? And I said, well, usually that plants. Kind of left her to her own. I mean, she's got a PhD, really bright lady. And so I come and check on her like 20 minutes later, and this is sticking out of the wall. If anyone has any idea what this is from, I'd love to know. But my suspicion is it could be ceratopsian. We're finding tons of ceratopsian elements there. That is, there is no, well, there's other dinosaurs just in the microsite mix, like little tiny things in the microsite. But of the big elements, 100% ceratopsian. So fingers crossed, this could be our boy Vegaceratops. I mean, statistically, it's probably a hadrosaur. But it's going back into the wall. There's a great big channel sand just above it. And that site was visited by Jordan Mallon a few years ago. But that was before we found the skin. After we found the skin, I think he's hopefully more excited. This is our Scapherpeton. This is from Matriarch as well. Again, what a cool site. Sorry about the blue stuff. I was here photographing, and Paul Johnson said, here, use this as a black or blue background. Naturally, it's staticky and sticks to little specimens, and this is only a centimeter or so. Can't get it off. So here we are. The far right side here is the lingual side, so that's the part pointing into the mouth. This is the buccal side, so the part pointing outside of the mouth. This is important because you don't really find these guys as whole specimens. Generally with amphibians, to find amphibians is kind of hard. Usually you have to do screen washing, sampling, sorting like you guys were talking about to find the amphibians. You don't find them as surface stuff. Usually, you can, but to find something that's identifiable is a little bit harder. So this guy is 13 meters higher than all the other recorded specimens. It's probably something new. I haven't heard back about it. I don't know if the trail wants it, but it's theirs for the taking if they want it. This is our Stegosaurus. Yeah, former RTMP quarry, found in the drainage. No more of it was found, despite it. It looks like there should be more of it. All of the edges are cleanly broken, no erosion. It looks like there should be more. And we scoured the hell out of this place like 3 times. We found this, and now the landowner no longer drives his quad down the drainage that it's, but yeah, really beautiful piece. This is the squamosal, which comes from kind of the back of the head. When pachycephalosaurs are juveniles, they kind of have a flatter skull, and when they get older, they get more domed. They go through kind of an interesting growth or ontogeny. They get kind of cool spikes in the back and stuff like that when they get older. So yeah, really pristine specimen. These are actually, after frontal parietal domes, these are the most common elements found from pachycephalosaurs, excluding teeth. So rare, but not the rarest as far as pachycephalosaurs go. But certainly, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, two skull domes, and now this. Maybe we'll get lucky. Here's our skeleton. So Don Brinkman actually collected several of the elements, so it not only looks exactly like a hand, but I'll use the pointer here for everyone watching at home. So this is a Sharpie for scale. You'll notice I'm really bad at bringing my scale bars. So here we have the hand here, the elements of the phalanx. You can see the end of the flanges there. Another finger coming through here, and a finger here that kind of, Don collected a few pieces of it, and it just isn't in great shape. As of 2 years ago, the radius and ulna has started coming out. So we are extremely certain that there is a skeleton back there. Jordan Allen visited as well and was licking his chops, rightfully so, because there's only like a few feet of overburden and it's like 200 meters from a road. Unfortunately now, no more access. He waited 1 year too long, unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. And our last year there, one of the kids calls me over, same layer, just meters away, he finds these ribs, 3 of them associated. Another skeleton, perhaps, or part of one. Really, really cool. And that's like within meters of each other, right? We're talking in an area where they found a skeleton that hasn't been published on because it lacks a skull, which is important for hadrosaurs, but it's covered in skin. I haven't seen it myself, but I was told there's quite a bit of skin on it. So there's, again, huge potential. So that's the end of sort of what we found in Irvine. There's, those are the most significant things. I could show you slides and slides and slides of Espideratoides, you know, Tyrannosaur tooth. You know, there's a lot we could show, but I'm not going to because I know a lot of you guys have seen all of that before. So my group is a volunteer group. We don't get permits usually. That's going to change. We're going to get one for, well, okay, so we'll start with future work for what's going on in Irvine. I really want to screen wash and statistically sample stuff at this layer. Weirdly enough, the stuff that has already been screen washed and sorted has not been sampled properly. So there's a ton of it at the Terrell, there's a ton of it at U of A. Nobody's ever really truly gone through it other than the cherry pit when Richard Fox cherry picked it and got all those specimens. So there's bound to be more. Bound to be more stuff, more new species. Excavate the hadrosaur skeleton if we can. I've handed that off to Canadian Museum. Hopefully they can work some magic and get it the hell out of there because that is a cool specimen, or will be. I really want to excavate the correct bone bed and sample the microsite and excavate more of the skin. I've reached out to 2 or 3 different institutions. Nothing has really been proposed for it yet, but we're still very early in field season planning, so who knows. That one we do have access. We do have full access to matriarch. And then, of course, we want to pop out this Borenis shell. There's almost no overburden taken afternoon. So that's the future of Irvine, hopefully. Things change down there rather rapidly as far as access. Okay, so for our group, we've got several projects. We are taking volunteers. I've had several volunteers bow out. One of them is going to Everest. One of them is having a kid. Yeah, right, like some pretty, a few of them just are too busy, right? Life happens. So we've got this fantastic Poplaparia. These are lobsters. Fantastic site up near Coronation. We went there one time and found a single one or two. I was with a pair of archaeologists, Rachel Lindemann and Tatiana Ewald. And we saw a personal collection, which is crazy. I swear this guy's got a dinosaur in his neighbor's land. He said, I'll get you access, and then said, maybe not. So we didn't actually see it. But these are, we went back, Stephanie Elderfield and I went back, we collected 100 of them. And more than half of them have full claws. Some of them actually have carapaces, which is diagnostic. So we're gonna actually, the plan is, we're gonna get those micro CT scanned at U of C and look for more of them. Really high chance of ammonite in that area, like huge chance. The locals all have ammonites from that same swath. So that's sort of, that's gonna happen this summer. We're quarrying some urchins. There's urchins, believe it or not, in the Horseshoe Canyon. Little things called cassiduloids. You've never probably heard of them, really featureless, small little urchins. First described in, gosh, 1914 or something like that. Really not a great paper, so re-description is happening. We need to quarry, get more specimens. Paul's gonna handle the permit. We will need people with pickaxes, hopefully. We're gonna revisit some old sites. While we're in the area, we might as well. We're teaming up with a few institutions. I don't know exactly which ones yet. We do have offers from one of them for sure. Another researcher's expressed interest. Yeah, there's several that we're going to be involved with. I'm not going to say who just yet in case it falls through, because it's moving target, right? But there will be the potential for excavating a ceratopsian bone bed, among other things, for new volunteers. Taking new volunteers, there's my contact info. And so I wrote a field report on this thing. It's like 100 pages. And it's got all of the site details right down to pointing exactly on the rock where these things come from. That is not for sale except to public or to research institutions that are interested in actually following up and doing some work there. But there will be a public version coming out that has all the detail, and we're talking like not just skimming over how many mammals, we're talking what the mammal was named and then later renamed, and then extra photos and things like that. Pretty useful reference material for just that whole region. So if anyone's interested in that, it'll only be like $40, and half of that, more than half of that's going to be the printing cost, believe it or not, like $23 or something. So if anyone's interested in that, they can come talk to me. That'll be ready sometime in the next month, I would think, because it's all basically written. I just gotta snip out the site details. And I think that's, oh no. I had a whole thing with like credits and acknowledgements, my God. There we go. Okay. So yeah, my dad and my late mom for constant support. Look at the number of people that have helped. We've got volunteers up top. The number of academics that have stepped in: James Campbell, Jordan Mallon, John Brinkman, Paul Johnston, Paul McNeil, Haley Street, Wendy Unfrey, big deal in the archaeology community, has helped me a great deal with that stuff. Just an unbelievable amount of support from so many. Craig Scott's another one. James Gardner. I mean, the list goes on of people that have actually thrown in to help me with this. Even GoFundMe backers, some of which are listening in today. And the locals, of course. I'm not going to name them because I don't want you going and knocking on their door because they might shoot you. I wish I was kidding. So the references were kind of skimmed. If you want to see full references, I can send them to you. There are 62 of them. 62 academic papers have been meticulously combed through to get all of this detail. So if you want those, I'll send them to you, no problem. That should be, that's it for the info dump. Does anyone have any questions? And I think we're going to have somebody pop onto the Zoom, etc., to manage any potential questions. Questions?
Just a quick comment. Most of the people that you mentioned that I've talked to have been speakers.
Oh, yeah, I'm aware. They're all fantastic, aren't they?
James Campbell, very good.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy. James Campbell is a great guy. Eric Snively, hey, how you doing? Hey, Jamie. Jamie is an interesting lady. She's down in North Carolina. They have a dredge of late Cretaceous that has pulled up thousands of these urchins that are in the same genus as ours. So she sent us 12 of them as comparative samples, just for free. There you go. Really cool lady. Any questions on their end?
No, none in there, but.
No question. Anybody questions? Yes.
I've never been out to a site before. I've never done any digging, real work, and I spoke about. Why is the family at the Irvine site so pissy about it?
So the families down in Irvine live there for a reason. They don't want to be talked to. I know one of them specifically.
Preppers?
No, some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
No, some of these families have moved there. I know one in particular moved from Medicine Hat to Irvine because they do not like people. They do not want people. I don't know why. There's just, maybe they just don't want to be bothered down in Irvine. Maybe, and that's fine. They've been so generous to me that I have no personal complaints about the community. So.
But the fact that they're actually armed.
Oh, armed, yeah, calling them armed is an understatement. I'm not kidding on that.
So booby trapped?
No, just heavily cameraed, every inch. Yeah.
Are they part of a fundamentalist sect?
Some of them are pretty religious, yeah. But I wouldn't call them a sect, per se. But no, they just don't want to
so
be.
So it's basically creationists against.
Some of them are creationists, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, if I could buy that land, I would move there in a heartbeat and never see another soul. I'd be so happy there.
You'd be so busy.
No, yeah, no, I'd be so busy. But also, it's just so peaceful. No cars, no ambulances, no whatever. I mean, I cannot fault them for living out there.
But you'd think that if they did it on a permit, like on a draw, like they do for getting an elk or something, or a permit system like they do in Yellowstone, you have 6 permits in the entire year, blah, blah, blah.
For hunting?
So every 2 months, you can have people going out there.
Yeah. I don't know. Personal preferences.
Okay, we have a question online.
Oh, yeah, sure.
From Eric Snively.
Okay.
How did the matriarch site get its name?
Oh, yeah, so Eric, you might have missed this. Matriarch was named because I was listening to a band called Unleash the Archers, right when I found it. Laura was waiting in the car. She was the medic, but decided not to go into the heat. So I was listening to music, and that's the song that came up. They're one of my favorite bands. They've actually won a Juno, and their lead singer donated to us, so I thought, hey, you know what? All the stars have aligned. Let's just call it Matriarch. Sounds cool. There's a reason for it. Yeah, that's the story of Matriarch.
Okay, and that's it for that one.
Okay. Yes.
I'm intrigued by these urchins.
Yes.
Horseshoe Canyon Formation. There must be a marine member in there, is there?
We haven't fully worked out the stratigraphy. What I can tell you is that it's not terribly far from the Dorothy Bentonites. Not terribly far. It's close.
Probably a little invaded.
Yeah, no, I'm not fully sure because we haven't actually seen the outcrop. specimens come from 20 years ago. A guy named Robin found them, sat at the trail for however many years. And then we went out again. I've been up 4 times. We found 1 block with 3 of them. It's ridiculous. So the whole outcrop is covered in grass. We're talking about the urchins here, by the way, for people online. The whole outcrop is covered in grass. So we need a permit just to start. Because, you know, anyone can dig a hole, but if somebody comes along and goes, well, you're paleontologists and you're digging soil up off of rock, you kind of run into, so we're gonna get that permit and quarry, actually go looking for them.
The paper you're talking about, is that about the Birch Lake one?
Correct.
Yeah.
My understanding that, so the Birch Lake, they're from Birch Lake, which is just south of, attached to Innisfree, basically. Talking to the locals, that place is a muddy mess. I cannot say for sure. We do plan to go back. I do know that they are preserved in ironstone though, so they are not the greatest for diagnostic reasons.
I mean, that was Valley River, wasn't it?
I believe it's Horseshoe Canyon, actually. Yeah, I think that's what we determined. We still haven't determined the stratigraphy of that particular. That's to be done once we kind of have a clear section. So that's part of the work that the quarrying we're hoping to do.
Your mosquito repellent. Neil was up there about 2 or 3 summers ago and checked it out and said they were running out of there.
Oh,
By the time they were done.
moose repellent too. So mosquito repellent, he was saying. Moose repellent too. There's at least 2 families down there that are not afraid of people. They've had interactions with the horses from the landowner, in fact. Yeah. So, yeah, anyone else? Yeah, you're free to ask again, yeah.
When we're micro sorting, like some of the little pieces you had up there, the photographs, I'm thinking, oh, shit, I missed something.
So she's asking about microsorting and looking at microvertebrate stuff, thinking, well, shit, did I miss something? I'll tell you, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So when we found that little ungule, that ornithomimid, Laura, who's sitting right over there, and Christian, not only could not figure out who found it, but they were just like, oh, I thought maybe it was a bone shard or something. I just put it in, I don't know why I put it in the bag. So 100% would have been missed. I just happened to have the right lighting and said, oh God, I know what this is. It's gonna happen. And it's gonna happen a lot. And that's okay.
Oddly enough, it's like, I wish we had like a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
That says,
Well,
if you see something that looks vaguely like this.
Don Brinkman made a guide. Do you have it?
Do you have it?
Yeah,
Do you have a copy of Don Brinkman's guides?
Okay.
Someone can send those to you. I can do it.
yeah, we have copies,
Oh, yeah.
and they're in the box. You just have to look in the box.
Yeah,
That we bring.
the fish section might be a little bit hard. I myself have never used it. Yeah, just go, oh, I think that's a gar.
But generally with microfossil sorting, what we're doing is things that are identifiable, like teeth go into one vial, and chips and anything bone, anything that looks a little bit like a bone goes into another vial. So it's not lost.
Yeah.
It's just in the miscellaneous bone
And someone
section.
usually goes over it again too.
Yes,
So, like,
exactly.
oftentimes, I know when I was 16 and working with Don Brinkman, I would go through it and then he would just double check. No problem. We all miss stuff. I mean, it's all about shape recognition and learning and training your eye. And so, I've been doing microvertebrate stuff since I was 16. So pretty okay at it now. Not compared to Don, the guy, oh my God. But I'm pretty good at it. I'm okay at it. Like I'm getting it, hoping to get to his level. But I would say just be persistent and patient. You'll get the guide that will be given to you, and then you can kind of, eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, oh yeah, hadrosaur, oh yeah, ceratops, and oh, we got an Aspideratoides. Like you'll get to that point. You just got to stick with it.
Yeah, and since we're working on the EOC, you won't be missing any dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And if you
We
do
know
find one, call me first. Yeah. If you find a dinosaur in the scene, call me.
Okay.
All you could do to, you're packing up and then you realize you've got a little bit, all you can do to not go.
Yeah, well, that's right, and stuff has been missed. So you're talking about wiping the dust off after you're done. Usually,
Just saying.
so they usually sort hydrodynamically for certain sizes, which is really interesting to me because I know of 2 mud layers in Drumheller right on the road. Like you walk right up. We've found 6 tyrannosaur teeth in the same 10-meter spot over the past 5-6 years. Big ones too, and it's coming out of mud. How is that being like hydro sorting for fossils? To me is a little bit foreign and really, really cool, and I don't have the background to fully understand it.
Okay.
Questions? No?
Nope. That's
All
it.
done?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you for listening.
A special thank you. It was just a super talk. And I think I have a tough time sleeping tonight because there's a lot of information.
Well, I apologize for all the info dump, like going through the fauna. I know there's a lot of people online, and there's a bunch of people back here, my relatives and friends and stuff, that do not know what a Vegaceratops is.
No, but a lot of the people here have somewhere along the line, right? They would recognize many of the things that you saw.
Absolutely.
That you showed them.
You guys would crush it if I had a big sack. I would come to you guys and say, let's get sorting, let's do this. But I don't have a big sack. I don't have the material to do it. Otherwise, I would.
So I just want to recognize our sponsors for this evening. We have the facilities here. So the Mount Royal University really helps us out, providing this room plus the lab upstairs. That's through their environmental and geology department. And also the Canadian Society of Petroleum Geologists through their Paleontology division. They support us as well. And of course, us, the Alberta Palaeontological Society.
Is this the majority of the society
Oh,
here?
no. Howard, how many people do we have? 150 people in the?
Yeah, it was on the, it's average around 129.
So if you can't hear that online, there's about 120 to 150 members of the society.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So on behalf of all of those and us as well, we have a nice T-shirt for you.
The t-shirt is blue, I love blue, so thank you very much.
So feel free to stand around and talk and sit down.
Thank you for listening, everyone at home.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna finish. Bye. We'll see you next month.
You'll probably see this.